Between the 5th and 11th centuries, roughly 85% of England's population lived as serfs, tied to land they could never leave, performing back-breaking labour from dawn till dusk and sharing one-room homes with their livestock just to survive. Life was relentless and unforgiving, but somehow these medieval peasants endured conditions that would break most modern humans within days. Here's what life was really like as a serf in early medieval England. Before the story, if these help you sleep, like or subscribe would be cool. Also, drop where you're listening from and the time. I check the comments and it's crazy seeing people from like Australia and Norway on the same video. Alright, tonight it's early medieval England, but first things first, get yourself comfortable. And I mean properly comfortable. This is going to be a good one. Your eyes crack open to darkness and the unmistakable smell of smoke, earth and animal dung. The roof above you is barely visible, just the underside of thatch where tiny creatures occasionally rustle and scurry. You're not alone in here, not even close. A chicken struts across your feet. Your family's precious pig grunts from its corner. The goat, your literal roommate, chews thoughtfully near your head. You're all sharing this single-room home made of wattle and daub, basically mud slapped over a woven wooden frame. And let me tell you, on this freezing morning, you're not exactly mad about having warm bodies around. Get up, your father grunts. Sun's almost here. You stir from your straw pallet on the hard-packed dirt floor. Unlike your memory foam mattress right now, there's nothing soft about where you've been sleeping, just a thin layer of straw that's been compressed by your body for months. You haven't changed it because, well, where would you get fresh straw in winter? The cold hits immediately. You're wearing the same wool tunic you wore yesterday and the day before. Actually, you've been wearing it since October. It's now February. No, you haven't washed it. Are you insane? It's freezing outside. Plus, washing clothes is a whole production involving lye that would destroy the natural oils that make the wool somewhat water resistant. Besides, everyone smells exactly like you do, a mixture of wood smoke, sweat, and that distinct human funk that comes from living without modern hygiene. I'm up, you mutter, though no one really cares about your complaints. Your mother is already awake, coaxing last night's embers back to life. This is perhaps the most important task of the morning. Without fire, you have no warmth, no cooked food, and honestly, little reason to live through a medieval February. Here, she says, handing you a chunk of dark bread. Eat. Hold up. Let me paint you a picture of this bread. This isn't your fluffy sourdough from Whole Foods. This is a dense, hard lump made from barley and rye. Whatever grains survived the winter, it's coarse because it's been ground by hand, which means tiny bits of stone from the grinding process are mixed in. Free dental work, by which I mean it slowly wears your teeth down to nubs. The bread is your breakfast. That's it. Maybe there's some hard cheese if your family is doing well. Maybe there's nothing but the bread if you're not. You're lucky it's not famine season. During those times, this chunk might be divided between 3 people. You eat quickly because there's no time to waste. You can already hear the manor steward outside calling for workers. As a serf, you're legally bound to this land. You're not a slave. Technically, you can't be bought and sold as a person, but you're the next closest thing. You're sold with the land. You cannot leave. Your children will inherit your status. This is your life. Boots, your father says, pointing to the single pair of leather shoes the family shares for outside work. It must be your day to wear them. Your mother and sister will stay behind today, continuing the endless indoor work, carding wool, spinning, weaving, cooking, preserving and maintaining this glorious mud hut you call home. Outside, the February morning is cruel. A thin, icy rain falls, the kind that somehow feels colder than snow. The village is a collection of huts, similar to yours, smoke rising from holes in their roofs, all clustered together and surrounded by the vast open fields where you'll spend your day. The smell hits you the moment you step outside. Medieval villages don't have sewage systems. There's a midden heap, basically the community trash and toilet area, not far from the houses. In summer, the stench is ungodly. Winter brings the small mercy of freezing some of the odour. "You're late," the steward says, a man you neither like nor can afford to offend. He works for the lord who owns this manor, the land, the village, and effectively, you. "Sorry," you mutter, joining the line of other serfs. Everyone looks as tired and dirty as you feel. Today's task, clearing drainage ditches in the Lord's fields. This means standing ankle deep in freezing water, digging through mud with wooden tools for hours. The work is mind-numbingly dull and physically exhausting. Your back will scream by midday. Your hands will bleed. Wait, I should explain something. In your head, you're probably thinking, I'd just run away. How would they even catch me? Right? I know, I've thought it too, but here's the thing. Where would you go? The next village over, they'd return you immediately. The forest? You'd die within days. Cities? They're tiny at this point, and you'd be an obvious outsider with no skills for urban life. Also, it's illegal to help runaway serfs. The punishment is severe. By mid-morning, your body is numb from the cold. Your stomach is already growling because that single piece of bread wasn't nearly enough calories for the work you're doing. But hunger is your constant companion, especially in the hungry gap. Late winter and early spring, when stored food runs low before new crops grow. "William's youngest died last night," whispers the man working beside you. His name is Edwin, and he's maybe 40, which makes him practically ancient in your world. His face is weathered, missing several teeth, and his hands are gnarled from decades of this same labour. "Fever?" you ask, though it could be any number of things. "Aye. Third child they've lost." You nod. Child mortality is so common that parents often don't name babies until they've survived their first year. About 1 in 3 won't make it to age 5. It's just the way of things. The conversation switches to more pressing matters. "Heard the Lord's adding another workday to our service," Edwin mutters, glancing around to make sure the steward isn't listening. As a serf, you owe your lord a set number of days working his land, called the domain, without pay. It's part of the deal for being protected and allowed to work a small strip of land for yourself. If the lord increases the required days, it means less time to grow food for your own family. Your stomach tightens with worry. Last year was already hard. Your family barely produced enough to feed themselves and pay the various taxes and tithes. The Lord gets a share. The church gets a share. The miller takes a portion to grind your grain. At every turn, someone is taking from what little you have. Around noon, there's a brief break. You sit on the damp ground, pulling out another small piece of bread. This is your lunch. No midday feast, no break room, no coffee run, just more bread, slightly more stale than breakfast. "You know what I heard," says a younger man named Watt, joining your small group. "Up north, in York, they say a man danced until he dropped dead, then 5 more started dancing, couldn't stop themselves." You've heard of this, the dancing plague. Nobody knows exactly what causes it, but most believe it's either demonic possession or divine punishment. Actually, it's probably ergot poisoning, a fungus that grows on rye in damp conditions. When consumed, it causes hallucinations, convulsions, and what looks like uncontrollable dancing. People can dance themselves to death from exhaustion. "God preserve us," Edwin mutters, making the sign of the cross. The thought of tainted grain adds another worry. Your family's stored rye needs to last until the new harvest. If it's contaminated, you might not know until the symptoms start. The Lord's steward is coming back around, ending your brief rest period. Back to work. Your hands are cracked and bleeding from the cold and wet. No gloves, of course. Those are a luxury. You wear rough wool clothing year-round. In summer, it's hot and itchy. In winter, if it gets wet, which it is now, it stays wet. Wet wool in freezing temperatures is its own special kind of torture. The day stretches endlessly. The sky is grey, the work is grey, your future is grey. There's no prospect of advancement, no medieval equivalent of a promotion or career change. You were born a serf, you'll die a serf. Your children will be serfs. This field, this village, this life, it's all you'll ever know, unless of course something worse happens. And speak of the devil. A horn sounds from the direction of the village. Everyone stops. That's not a normal sound. Horns mean trouble. "All raiders?" someone whispers. The steward looks concerned for once. "Back to the village," he orders. You feel a spike of fear. Raiders are rare this far inland, but not impossible. Vikings may have mostly settled down by now, but there are always threats. Outlaws, soldiers from conflicts between nobles, or even just hungry men from other struggling villages. As your group hurries back, you spot smoke. Not the normal cooking fire smoke, but larger, darker plumes. Something is burning in the village. Your throat tightens. Your mother and sister are there. Your home, your few possessions, your stored food, everything that stands between you and starvation. The men around you pick up pace, some breaking into runs despite their exhaustion. You do the same, heart pounding, legs burning with effort after the long morning of labour. The smoke gets thicker as you approach. When you crest the small hill overlooking your village, the scene stops you cold. 3 buildings are fully engulfed in flames. People are running, screaming. There are mounted men, at least a dozen, wearing the colours of a neighbouring lord. "Not raiders," Edwin says grimly beside you. "Worse, lord's conflict. You're caught in the middle of a dispute between nobles. Your lord has apparently angered another, who's decided to punish him by destroying his property. That property includes your village, your home, and you." One of the mounted men spots your group returning from the fields. He points, shouts something to his companions. 3 riders break off, heading in your direction. The steward, who moments ago was ordering you around, looks as terrified as you feel. "Run!" he shouts, and just like that, you're all running, not toward the village now, but away, toward the forest edge. You've never moved so fast in your life, adrenaline overriding the fatigue in your muscles. Behind you, hoofbeats grow louder. You reach the tree line just as an arrow thunks into a trunk beside you. The forest is technically the Lord's property too, his private hunting ground where serfs are forbidden. Right now, no one cares about that law. The dense undergrowth slows the horses. You keep running. Branches whipping your face, thorns tearing at your clothes. You can hear others crashing through the brush around you, but you've lost sight of everyone except Edwin, who somehow keeps pace despite his age. "This way," he hisses, veering left. You follow without question. The sounds of pursuit fade slightly. Edwin leads you to a small stream, then into it. "Walk in the water," he instructs. Hides our trail. The icy water is agony on your already cold, wet feet, but you obey. Survival trumps comfort. You wade downstream for what feels like an eternity before Edwin finally signals to exit on the opposite bank. There, concealed in a dense thicket, you find others from your village, including, to your immense relief, your mother and sister. Your mother's face is streaked with soot, and your sister is quietly sobbing, but they're alive. "Our home?" you ask, already knowing the answer from their faces. Your mother shakes her head. "Gone. Everything." reality sinks in. You've lost what little you had. Your stored food, your few tools, the roof over your head. Winter isn't over. Without shelter and food, survival becomes questionable. Your father isn't among the group. No one's seen him. The waiting is unbearable as more villagers trickle into this makeshift forest refuge. Night begins to fall, bringing even colder temperatures. Without fire, too risky with the raiders possibly still searching, the cold becomes dangerous. People huddle together for warmth, sharing the few cloaks and blankets some manage to grab. Children whimper from hunger and fear. You curl up between your mother and sister, sharing body heat, wondering what happens next. The sound of someone approaching sends a jolt of fear through the group. Everyone freezes. Then a whispered voice. It's Oswald and John. We're bringing more. More villagers emerge from the darkness, including, at last, your father. His face is bloody, but he's moving under his own power. Your family embraces in silent relief. As you cling to each other in the freezing dark, you realize this is just the beginning of your hardships. Even if the raiders leave, you'll return to burned homes, possibly destroyed food stores, and fields that still need tending despite your personal catastrophe. The Lord will not reduce your obligations because of this attack, and yet somehow people survive. They rebuild, they endure. Medieval peasants were nothing if not resilient. They had to be. As the night deepens and your family presses together for warmth, you listen to the elders already making plans for rebuilding, for finding food, for survival. This isn't the first disaster they've weathered. It likely won't be the last. The cold seeps into your bones, hunger gnaws at your stomach, and fear of what tomorrow brings keeps your mind racing despite your exhaustion. This is just one day in the life of a medieval serf. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new hardships, and somehow you'll find the strength to face them. Because that's what your ancestors did. They survived against all odds in conditions that would break most modern humans within days. Their blood runs in your veins. Their strength is your inheritance. In the darkness of the forest, facing an uncertain future, you close your eyes. Survival means taking rest when you can get it, even on the cold, hard ground, huddled against your family for warmth. Dawn breaks through the trees, pale light filtering down to where you and the other villagers have spent the most miserable night of your lives. Your body aches from the cold ground. Your stomach feels hollow. The clothes you've been wearing for months are now not just dirty, but torn from your escape through the forest. They gone? Someone whispers. Nobody knows for sure. Your father volunteers to scout along with 3 other men. The waiting is torture. Children whimper from hunger and the adults have nothing to give them. The cold has seeped so deep into your bones that you wonder if you'll ever feel warm again. Edwin, the older man who helped you escape yesterday, sits nearby, his face grim. Had this happened once before, he says quietly. 15 years back, different lords quarrel. What did you do, you ask? He gives a bitter laugh. What could we do? Rebuilt, replanted, starved a bit. Life goes on until it doesn't. That's when you notice his hands, gnarled, scarred, with 2 fingers missing from his left. Frostbite, he explains, following your gaze. Bad winter after that raid. No proper shelter for months. Well, that's a cheerful thought. After what feels like forever, the scouts return. They've moved on, your father reports, though his relieved expression quickly fades. Village is... it's bad. The walk back is silent, everyone preparing themselves for what's coming. When you crest the hill overlooking your home, the scene is worse than you imagined. Half the village is simply gone, replaced by smoking ruins. The other half stands damaged but not completely destroyed. Your family home is among the total losses. Nothing remains but a blackened outline on the ground and a few charred timbers. The livestock, your precious pig, the chickens, the goat, all gone, either stolen or burned alive. Jesus, someone mutters behind you. An appropriate prayer, given the circumstances. The village church, a modest wooden structure, somehow survived mostly intact. The priest, Father Ethelred, stands in the doorway, his robes filthy. He looks as shell-shocked as everyone else. The Lord tests us, he begins, as villagers gather. His voice wavers. Even he doesn't seem convinced by his own words. Reality sinks in quickly. This isn't just about losing your homes. Your food stores are gone. The seeds saved for spring planting, gone. Tools, clothing, everything needed for survival, gone. And it's still February, the hunger month in normal years. This is about as far from normal as it gets. The steward arrives from the manor house, the Lord's residence situated about a mile away on higher ground. Of course, it wasn't touched by the raid. The Lord offers his condolences, the steward announces, looking uncomfortable. A murmur runs through the crowd. Condolences don't rebuild houses or fill empty bellies. He requires workers at the manor tomorrow, the steward continues. Regular duties must continue. This statement is met with stunned silence. Your homes are destroyed and the Lord expects work to continue as normal. Edwin steps forward, his weathered face creased with barely controlled anger. We've lost everything. Our families need shelter, food. The steward shifts his weight, clearly the messenger who doesn't want to be killed for his message. The Lord says those who work will receive a meal, and permission to use timber from the edge of his forest for rebuilding. Not freely given timber, mind you, just permission to cut it yourself after a full day's work. How generous. Your father joins Edwin. Ask him for grain, from his stores, just enough to keep us alive until I will convey your request. The steward cuts him off. Those who wish to eat tomorrow will report for work at dawn. With that, he turns and leaves. The reality of feudalism hits you right in the face. The Lord is obligated to provide protection, yes, but he clearly failed at that. Still, you remain obligated to him. The relationship only works in one direction when it really matters. All right, your father says, turning to your mother and sister. We need shelter first. The next hours are a blur of desperate activity. With your home destroyed, your family joins forces with your cousins whose house was damaged but still has half a wall standing. Together you scavenge through the ruins for anything usable. A bent cooking pot, a partially burned wooden bowl, a handful of nails that can be straightened and reused. You've never truly appreciated how little you owned until you're picking through its ashes. The immediate goal, create some kind of shelter before nightfall, without tools, without materials, with only bare hands and desperation. Your uncle had been a woodworker, not a formal profession, just a skill he'd developed. He directs the efforts to salvage timber from the ruins and forest edge. Don't touch that yet, he warns as a young man tries to move a charred beam, still hot underneath. You'll burn yourself. The smell is overwhelming. Burnt wood, burnt thatch, and worse scents you try to ignore. Was that a person's home or their grave? In some cases, it's both. By midday, your stomach is screaming with hunger. The physical labour of digging through ruins and dragging salvaged materials makes it worse. Your mother has been searching for anything edible in the forest edge and returns with a small handful of winter nuts and some kind of roots. Not much, she says apologetically, dividing the pitiful findings among your family. The nuts are hard and bitter. The roots taste like dirt but might have some nutritional value. It does almost nothing to ease the hunger. Some of the men are going to try fishing, your father says. The nearby stream might yield something, though winter fishing is rarely productive. The makeshift shelter takes shape slowly, a lopsided lean-to constructed of salvaged timbers and branches covered with whatever will keep out the elements, scraps of undamaged thatch, tree boughs, even dirt packed over sticks. It's more like an animal den than a human dwelling. but it will provide minimal protection from wind and rain. As you work, you notice blood on your hands from where blisters have formed and broken. There's no time to care about that. Pain is just another constant companion, like hunger. By late afternoon, more villagers straggle back from the forest where they'd hidden. Some bring meagre, foraged foods. One man managed to snare a rabbit, a prize that causes actual cheering. It's a pitiful amount for so many, but something. "What now?" your sister asks as your family huddles in the half-finished shelter, the day's light fading. She's 14, old enough to understand the direness of your situation, young enough to still look to adults for answers they don't have. Your father stares at his bloody hands. "Tomorrow we work. We eat the Lord's food. We start rebuilding. And if there's not enough food," she persists. Your mother shoots her a warning look. Some fears are better left unspoken. That night is another exercise in misery. The lean-to keeps off the worst of the wind, but does little for warmth. Your family sleeps huddled together on the bare ground, covered with the single blanket someone salvaged. Sleep comes in fitful bursts, interrupted by cold, discomfort and the sounds of others suffering around you. Morning arrives with frost coating the ground. You can see your breath inside the shelter. Everything hurts from sleeping on the hard earth, and your empty stomach has given up growling and settled into a dull, persistent ache. Still, at dawn, most able-bodied villagers report for work at the manor as ordered. The promise of food is too powerful to ignore. Your father goes. You go too, deemed old enough for a full day's labour. The manor house sits on a rise overlooking the village and surrounding fields. It's a timber structure, far larger and sturdier than the peasant homes below. Smoke rises from multiple hearths inside. The smell of cooking food reaches you even at the gate, making your mouth water painfully. The steward divides workers into groups. Some will repair a section of the Lord's fence that's rotting, others will clear drainage ditches. Your task from yesterday apparently still a priority, despite your village being in ashes. A third group will help in the manor's brewery, where ale is being prepared. You're assigned to the drainage crew again. Another day of standing in freezing water. At least the promised meal keeps hope alive. The work is even harder today, weakened as you are by hunger and poor sleep. Your muscles scream with each shovelful of mud. The man working next to you isn't Edwin, but a younger villager named Watt. "Heard anything from the other side of the village?" you ask him during a brief pause. His family lived on the far end. Watt shakes his head grimly. "My cousin's baby died in the night. Cold, probably." Just another casualty that won't make any history books. Medieval life continues, brutal in its indifference. Midday brings the promised meal. A bowl of pottage, a thick soup, and a chunk of bread for each worker. It's basic fare, but after nearly 2 days without real food, it tastes miraculous. You eat slowly, savouring each bite, knowing it needs to fuel hours more labour. The conversation among the workers is subdued, focused on immediate concerns. Who has extra space in their shelter? Who might have tools to share? Who needs help digging out their stored root vegetables if they weren't destroyed? Church roof needs repair, someone mentions. Father says we should make that a priority. A few men snort at this. God's house can wait when human dwellings are gone, but the church is also the village's communal building, its storeroom, its heart. There's practical value beyond the religious aspect. Thomas's boy has the cough, another man says quietly. Everyone grows silent at this. The cough could mean many things, none good. In winter, respiratory illnesses spread quickly and can be deadly, especially to the young and old. "My grandmother knows a remedy," offers a young man. "Boiled horehound and honey." "Where's honey coming from?" someone scoffs. Raiders took everything. Wild hives, the young man insists. I know where to find them. In February, with snow still on the ground. Good luck, lad. The conversation illustrates a harsh reality. Medical care in your time consists primarily of herbal remedies of questionable effectiveness, most unavailable in winter anyway. Prayer is the other option. Neither seems particularly reliable. After the meal, it's back to work until sunset. By the time you're released to return to the village, your body feels twice its age. Every muscle aches, your hands are torn and bleeding, but your stomach is no longer completely empty, and you have permission to cut timber tomorrow after work. Plus, you've managed to secret away a small portion of your bread tucked inside your tunic to bring back to your mother and sister. Many others have done the same, the Lord's generosity redistributed through sleight of hand. The village looks different when you return. Signs of progress amid the devastation. Some makeshift shelters have improved. A communal cooking fire burns in what was once the village centre. People have organised themselves, as they always do in crisis. You find your mother helping tend that fire, your sister gathering water from the stream. The small piece of bread you smuggled out is accepted with tears of gratitude and divided carefully. That night, more villagers crowd into your family's makeshift shelter. Body heat becomes precious. Personal space becomes irrelevant. You sleep sandwiched between your sister and a neighbour's teenage son, while your parents share the space with the neighbour couple. Like old Simeon's inn, jokes the neighbour man, referring to the biblical story of no room at the inn, except we're all the animals. The weak laughter this earns feels like a victory. Humour, however dark, means spirits aren't completely broken. Sleep comes easier tonight, despite the crowding. Exhaustion trumps discomfort. Tomorrow will bring more of the same. Work, scavenging, rebuilding. The day after that, the same again. This is how you survive catastrophe in medieval England. One day at a time, one meal when you can get it, work that never ends, and the knowledge that eventually things might improve, at least until the next disaster strikes. As you drift off, pressed between bodies for warmth, you think about the cycles of peasant life. Spring will come, bringing planting season and more food, but also new kinds of labour. Summer means crops to tend constantly. Autumn brings harvest and taxes. Winter means cold and scarcity. Each season has its challenges, its rhythms, its specific ways to kill you if you're not careful or lucky. But humans are adaptable. Your medieval ancestors, the ones whose blood runs in your veins, survived these conditions. They rebuilt after disasters. They worked fields until their hands bled, ate food that barely qualified as nutrition, lived in homes that modern humans would consider unfit for animals, and somehow they endured. In your almost sleep, you hear whispered conversations around you, plans for tomorrow. Who will search for more food? Who will care for the orphaned children? Who will begin rebuilding the church? The community organises itself as it has countless times before. Medieval village life wasn't just about individual survival, it was about collective resilience. No single person could make it alone. You needed your neighbours as much as they needed you. For all the hardship, there was a certain security in that interdependence that modern life rarely captures. The last thing you hear before sleep finally claims you as your father's whispered voice to your mother. We'll be all right, we always are. Against all odds, he might even be right. Days blur into weeks. Late February becomes early March. The work never stops, labouring for the Lord by day, rebuilding your own lives by night. Somehow your village begins to take shape again, though shape is a generous description for the hodgepodge of shelters rising from the ashes. Your family's new home is nothing like the old one. It's smaller, cruder, built with green wood that warps and shrinks as it dries. The walls have gaps you stuff with moss and mud. The roof leaks when it rains, which it does constantly because, well, England. At least it's something your mother says, trying to sound positive as water drips onto her shoulder. The weather is changing, though. Subtle shifts that only farmers notice. The quality of light, the smell of the air, the slightly later sunset. Spring approaches, bringing both relief and new challenges. Relief because winter's deadly cold will ease. Challenge because now begins the most critical period of the agricultural year, planting. Get it wrong and people starve come autumn. But first, there's Lent, 40 days of religious fasting before Easter, because medieval life wasn't hard enough already. The church mandates no meat, no dairy, no eggs. Basically, your already limited diet becomes even more restricted. Father Ethelred looks uncomfortable announcing this at Sunday Mass in the half-repaired church. Even he recognises the absurdity, people already starving being told to fast. Given our circumstances, he says carefully, certain allowances may be made for the youngest and oldest among us. This is his way of bending the rules without directly contradicting the church. Church is where you learn that the raid wasn't isolated. 3 other villages suffered similar fates, a petty war between lords that peasants pay for with their lives. Did our Lord win at least? Someone asks bitterly. The priest purses his lips. The conflict continues. Great. So it could happen again. After Mass, the village gathers for the weekly meeting. These have become essential for coordinating rebuilding efforts. The village reeve, a peasant elected to manage community affairs, stands before the crowd. Planting begins next week, he announces. We need to take inventory of seed. A grim silence follows. Most families lost their seed grain in the fires. Without seeds, there's nothing to plant. Without planting, there's no harvest. Without harvest, well, you can do the math. Edwin speaks up. The monastery at Glaston might help. They've aided villages before. It's 3 days' walk, someone points out. I'll go, volunteers a man named Cedric. Others join him. A delegation will travel to the monastery to beg for seed grain. It's a long shot, but desperation breeds boldness. Talk turns to immediate concerns. Thomas's son, the boy with the cough, has gotten worse. Several others now show similar symptoms. Illness spreads fast when people are crammed together in inadequate shelter with poor nutrition. Your mother, who knows something about herbal remedies, offers to help. I found wild garlic near the stream, she says, and there's still some dried yarrow from last summer. The gathering breaks up as rain begins to fall again. Your family hurries to your leaky shelter, where your father immediately gets to work trying to improve the roof. The next morning brings something you haven't seen in months. Sunshine. Weak, watery English sunshine, but still, the psychological effect is immediate. People emerge from shelters with something close to hope on their faces. Your mother takes advantage of the weather to tackle the monumental task of laundry. In your modern life, you probably don't think much about doing laundry. In medieval England, it's practically an Olympic event. First, she builds a fire to heat water in your salvaged cooking pot. While that's happening, she makes lye soap by filtering water through saved wood ashes. The resulting solution is caustic enough to burn skin, but effective at cutting through months of accumulated grime. Your sister helps, pounding the wet clothes with a wooden paddle. The work is exhausting. No washing machines, no dryers, not even running water. Everything done by hand using homemade soap that's basically one step away from being a chemical weapon. These might actually be clean, your sister says with wonder, hanging sodden tunics on branches to dry. Or they'll dissolve completely, your mother replies with a rare smile. While they handle laundry, you and your father join other men working on a new communal project, a proper oven. Individual families can't afford separate ovens, so villages share one or two. Without it, bread must be cooked in the fire, yielding poor results. The oven is clay and stone, built with techniques passed down through generations. It's back-breaking work, hauling stones from the stream and clay from the riverbank, but the result will benefit everyone. Midday brings news. The first returning members of the delegation to the monastery. Their faces tell the story before words do. The journey was successful. The monks provided seed grain, enough for essential crops. They're sending a cart, Cedric explains. Too much to carry back on foot. A cheer goes up from the gathered villagers. It's the first genuine celebration since the raid. This single act of charity might mean the difference between life and death for the entire community. The monastery's generosity isn't entirely selfless. Religious institutions and peasant communities exist in a symbiotic relationship. The monastery needs functioning villages as much as villages sometimes need the monastery's help. Still, in this moment, it feels like divine intervention. As the day continues, you notice your sister moving more slowly, her face flushed despite the cool air. "Are you well?" you ask her. "Just tired," she insists, but her voice sounds strange. By evening, she's burning with fever, her breathing laboured. The cough that took Thomas's son has found your family. Your mother looks grim as she places a cool cloth on your sister's forehead. "We need to bring her fever down." This is the moment you truly understand medieval medicine, or rather the lack of it. No antibiotics, no hospitals, not even a proper understanding of what causes disease. Your sister's life hangs in the balance, with only folk remedies and prayer standing between her and death. Your mother sends you to gather more wild garlic and to ask neighbours for any herbs they might have. One elderly woman provides dried feverfew. Another offers honey, precious as gold in late winter. The night is long and frightening. Your sister alternates between shivering with chills and burning with fever. Your mother doesn't sleep, constantly adjusting remedies, spooning herbal teas and honey mixtures between your sister's cracked lips. Your father sits helplessly nearby. For all his strength in the fields, he can do nothing here except occasionally fetch water or stoke the fire. By morning, your sister seems marginally better. Her fever hasn't broken, but it hasn't risen either. Your mother looks exhausted but relieved. "Go to work," she tells you and your father. "I'll tend to her. The Lord's fields won't plough themselves after all. The recent disaster hasn't changed the fundamental rhythm of medieval life or the demands of feudal obligation." Today's task is preparing fields for planting, breaking up soil that's been fallow over winter. The work is done with wooden ploughs pulled by oxen, if a village is fortunate enough to have them. Your village lost most livestock in the raid, so much of the work must be done by hand using mattocks. Back-breaking alternative that's painfully slow. "My wife's sick too," says Watt as you work side by side. "Same cough." You nod grimly. "My sister." No further words are needed. Everyone understands the threat. In close-packed villages with poor sanitation and weakened populations, disease spreads like fire. Medieval people don't understand germ theory, but they recognise patterns. "Father Ethelred is blessing houses tonight," Watt adds. For what it's worth. Religion and medicine blur together in your world. Illness might be treated with herbs, but it's also addressed with prayers, blessings, and sometimes exorcisms. The line between natural and supernatural is thin, almost non-existent. Midday brings surprising news. The steward approaches the working men with an unusual announcement. The Lord requests 3 men to help with preparations for a judicial proceeding tomorrow. This catches everyone's attention. Courts are rare events, usually held a few times yearly for the entire manor. For one to be called now suggests something significant. "What manner of proceeding?" asks the reeve cautiously. The steward looks uncomfortable. "A man from Westfield is accused of stealing the Lord's grain during the confusion after the raids." Westfield is a neighbouring village that suffered similar attacks. The accused man's alleged crime is understandable, if true. Starving people make desperate choices. Your father volunteers along with 2 others. The work will be less physically demanding than field preparation, and it comes with the promise of food at the manor house. That evening you return to find your sister's condition unchanged, neither better nor worse. In medieval medicine, this is actually a victory. Your mother looks ready to collapse from exhaustion. Father Ethelred visits as promised, bringing a small vial of holy water to bless your shelter and its occupants. The ritual provides comfort, if not cure. He speaks quiet words to your mother, offering spiritual reassurance. After he leaves, your mother reveals what else the priest shared. News too sensitive for open discussion. "The accused man from Westfield," she whispers. "They say he'll face the ordeal." Your blood runs cold at these words. Trial by ordeal is exactly as terrible as it sounds. Unable to determine guilt through evidence or testimony alone, medieval courts sometimes turned to divine judgment. Physical tests believed to reveal God's verdict. "Which ordeal?" your father asks grimly. "Hot iron. The ordeal of hot iron requires the accused to carry a red-hot iron bar for a specified distance. Afterward, the hand is bandaged. When unwrapped days later, the state of the burn supposedly reveals guilt or innocence. Clean healing indicates innocence. Infection suggests guilt. It's barbaric, painful, and completely unreliable as a determinant of actual guilt. But it's how justice sometimes works in your world. Morning brings the arrival of the seed grain from the monastery, a cart laden with precious sacks of barley, rye, and peas. The village reeve oversees its division among families according to their land holdings and needs. Your father isn't present for this distribution, having gone to assist at the manor for the judicial proceeding. Your mother sends you in his place, trusting you to represent family interests. The division is tense but orderly. Everyone knows what's at stake. Arguments break out occasionally over who deserves what portion, but the reeve manages the process with firm authority. Your family receives enough seed for your strips of land, less than you'd have planted in a normal year, but enough to provide hope for some harvest. As you're securing your precious sacks to carry home, Edwin approaches. "Your sister," he says quietly. "How fares she?" "No worse," you reply. "Perhaps a little better." He nods, then reaches into his tunic and pulls out a small cloth bundle. "For her, my wife saved these from our herb garden. Inside are dried leaves you recognize as sage, known for treating coughs and fevers. It's a generous gift from a family that has little to spare." "Thank you," you say, genuinely moved. "Why?" "Your father helped rebuild our shelter when my back was too pained to work," he explains simply. "We help each other. It's how we survive." This small exchange captures something essential about medieval village life. In a world without social safety nets, without insurance or government assistance, the community itself is the safety net. Neighbours help neighbours not just from kindness, but from necessity. Today you need help, tomorrow you'll provide it. You return home to find your sister sitting up, taking broth from your mother's hand. Her fever has broken. She's weak, her cough still present but less severe. She'll recover, barring complications. The relief is overwhelming. In a time when every illness carries the shadow of death, recovery feels miraculous. Your father returns at dusk, his expression troubled. The judicial proceeding went as expected. The accused man, protesting his innocence, underwent the ordeal of hot iron. The results won't be known for 3 days when his bandages are removed. But they found grain in his home, your father says quietly. Matches what was stored at the manor. Was he stealing, you ask? Your father shrugs. Maybe, or maybe he got it elsewhere. Hard to tell one grain from another. The implication is clear. The man's guilt is uncertain, but his punishment is assured. His hand is now horrifically burned, and if infection sets in, as it likely will, he may lose it entirely. Justice in medieval England is swift, painful, and often arbitrary. The conversation shifts to more immediate concerns. Tomorrow begins the intensive work of planting, probably the most important task of the entire year. Every able-bodied person will participate, including children old enough to help. Despite exhaustion, despite illness, despite the trauma of recent events, planting cannot be delayed. The growing season in England is short. Miss the window and winter will find you with empty storerooms. As darkness falls completely, your family shares a meagre meal of pottage, a thick soup made with whatever vegetables could be found, stretched with barley from your day's allotment. It's filling, if not particularly nutritious or tasty. Talk turns to plans for improving your shelter when time allows. A proper roof, real walls, maybe even a separate area for sleeping, though that's an ambitious goal. These modest aspirations highlight the grinding poverty of medieval peasant life. The things you hope for are named that doesn't leak. Walls without drafts would be considered uninhabitable by modern standards, yet they represent progress, improvement, something to strive for. Your sister falls asleep early, her body demanding rest to heal. Your parents soon follow, exhausted from work and worry. You remain awake a little longer, listening to the sounds of the village settling for the night. Somewhere a baby cries, a dog barks, low conversations drift from nearby shelters. Despite everything, life continues. People adapt, they rebuild, they plant seeds and hope for harvest. The resilience is remarkable. Where modern humans might despair, your medieval counterparts simply endure. They lack alternatives, perhaps, but there's also a wisdom in their acceptance of hardship as part of life's fabric. As sleep finally claims you, your thoughts drift to tomorrow's planting, the work that will determine whether your family eats or starves 6 months from now. Every day matters, every decision has consequences. And yet, for all its harshness, there's a clarity to this existence, a directness. Work, eat, sleep, survive. Repeat until you can't anymore. Medieval life strips away pretense and leaves only the essential. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but tonight your sister breathes easier, seeds wait to be planted, and your crude shelter keeps off at least some of the rain. By medieval standards, things could be much worse. Morning comes earlier now, not just because days are lengthening with spring's approach, but because planting season demands every hour of daylight. Your family rises before dawn, chewing on cold bread left from the night before as you head to the fields. Medieval farming isn't just hard work, it's an intricate dance with nature that your ancestors have perfected over generations. You can't just throw seeds anywhere and hope. The timing, the method, the arrangement, everything matters. The village fields are divided into strips, with families assigned different sections in a complex rotation system. This ensures no one gets stuck with only the worst land year after year. It's surprisingly egalitarian for a society otherwise defined by rigid hierarchy. We plant the rye here, your father explains, showing you a section of field. Barley there, peas at the far end where the soil's richer. The three-field system is in use. One field planted with winter crops, one with spring crops, and one left fallow to recover nutrients. It's a sustainable practice developed through centuries of trial and error. Watching the whole village work together is kind of impressive, actually. Men break the ground with ploughs where available or mattocks where not. Women follow, dropping seeds with practiced precision. Children help by chasing away birds that would feast on the newly sown fields. Not too deep, an older woman corrects your sister, who's helping with planting despite her recent illness. Seeds need to breathe. There's a precision to this work that outsiders wouldn't appreciate. Medieval peasants may not have formal education, but they possess generations of accumulated agricultural knowledge. They know their soil, their climate, their crops. Midday brings a brief rest. People share what food they have, mostly bread and perhaps a bit of hard cheese. You notice a girl about your age sitting slightly apart from others. Her name is Eliza, daughter of a family from the far side of the village. Her father died in the raid. "The birds are worse this year," she says when you sit nearby. "Everything's worse this year," you reply. She gives a small smile at that. True enough. Conversations like this, brief exchanges during work, comprise most of the social interaction between unmarried young people in your world. No dating, no parties, no social media, just moments stolen between endless labour. The afternoon brings a visit from the steward, watching the planting progress with critical eyes. The Lord's interest is clear. Peasant fields produce food, but they also produce the Lord's income through various taxes and tithes. "The south field needs finishing today," he announces. No one argues, though the sun is already past its peak, and everyone has been working since dawn. As planting continues, you overhear snippets of conversation that paint a picture of village concerns. "We'll need new thatch before autumn rains." The miller's charging more for grinding, says his wheel needs repair. Mary's eldest is leaving for town, apprenticed to a leather worker. The Westfield man's bandages come off tomorrow, God help him. This last comment draws your attention back to the judicial ordeal you learned about yesterday. Tomorrow determines whether the accused thief is deemed innocent or guilty based on how his burned hand has healed. "What happens if he's found guilty?" you ask your father quietly. "Depends on the Lord's mood," he replies grimly. "Could be a fine he can't pay, could be losing the hand completely, could be hanging." Medieval justice isn't just harsh, it's wildly inconsistent. The same crime might result in a minor punishment or death, depending on who you are, who you offended, and the whims of those in power. As the sun begins to set, the steward finally allows work to end. Your family trudges home, filthy and exhausted. Every muscle aches from constant bending, lifting, and carrying. Yet there's still work to be done before sleep. Your mother uses the last daylight to check your sister's foraging haul. Early spring greens like nettles, dandelions, and wild garlic. These plants, which modern folks might consider weeds, are precious additions to the medieval diet, especially after winter when fresh food is scarce. "Good," she approves. "The nettles will help your sister regain strength." Stinging nettles, handled with care and cooked properly, are surprisingly nutritious, rich in iron and vitamins. Medieval people may not understand nutrition science, but they know through experience which plants help heal and strengthen the body. Dinner is nettle soup with barley, more flavourful than yesterday's pottage thanks to the foraged greens and wild garlic. As you eat, your father discusses tomorrow's work. More planting, of course. The good weather can't be wasted. We need to repair fishing nets too, he adds. Streams running high with spring melt, good time for catching. Every food source matters now. The monastery's seed grain saved you from starvation, but it's barely enough for planting. Very little remains for eating. Until harvest, you'll survive on whatever can be foraged, caught or purchased with what little coin your family might scrape together. Night has fully fallen now. Unlike in your modern life, darkness is nearly complete. No streetlights, no electronics, not even candles in most peasant homes. Candles are expensive luxuries made from beeswax or tallow, animal fat. Your family, like most, relies primarily on the hearth fire for light. This means that, practically speaking, people sleep when it's dark and wake when it's light. Your body's rhythms sync with the sun out of necessity. As your family prepares for sleep, a commotion outside draws attention. Voices shouting. Your father moves to the door. What's happening? Your mother asks. Fire, he says, his voice tight with fear. At the edge of the village, fire, the eternal terror of medieval communities. Wooden buildings, thatch roofs, open flames for cooking and heating. It's a disaster waiting to happen. And when it does, there's no fire department to call. Your family rushes outside along with everyone else. In the distance, orange flames illuminate the night. It's the miller's house and mill at the village edge near the stream. Buckets, someone shouts. Form a line to the stream. The entire village mobilizes instantly. Even children join the bucket chain, passing water from hand to combat the flames. It's the only firefighting method available. Human chains and desperate effort. You find yourself between Eliza and an older man, passing heavy wooden buckets so quickly your arms burn with effort. The heat from the fire grows intense as you get closer. Sparks float dangerously on the night air, threatening to spread the fire to nearby structures. "The mill wheel!" someone shouts. "Save the wheel!" The wooden water wheel is the heart of the mill, essential for grinding grain. Without it, the village has no easy way to process wheat and barley into flour. Its loss would be catastrophic. Men with wet blankets rush dangerously close to the flames, beating at the fire where it threatens the wheel mechanism. Women and children keep the bucket line moving. The village priest stands slightly apart, lips moving in fervent prayer. For 2 exhausting hours the battle continues. Finally, the flames begin to recede. The mill structure is mostly gone, but miraculously the water wheel remains intact. The miller's family made it out safely, though they've lost everything else. As the immediate danger passes, people begin speculating about the fire's cause. A stray ember, a knocked-over lamp, then a troubling rumour spreads. "It wasn't accident," an old woman whispers. "The miller raised his grinding prices. Someone did this." The accusation sends a chill through the crowd. Arson is a deadly serious crime in a world where one fire can destroy an entire community. If true, this is no longer just a tragedy, but a deliberate attack on village welfare. "Nonsense," the Reeve says firmly. "Who among us would do such a thing? We all need the mill." His words calm the immediate tension, but suspicion lingers. Hard times bring out both the best and worst in people. You've seen incredible generosity since the raid, families sharing what little they have, working together to rebuild, but desperation can also turn neighbours against each other. It's well past midnight when your family finally returns to your shelter. Despite bone-deep exhaustion from the day's planting, followed by firefighting, sleep doesn't come easily. The smell of smoke clings to your clothes and hair, and your mind races with the evening's events. "Will the mill work again soon?" you ask in the darkness. "The wheel's intact," your father answers. "The miller can rebuild the housing. We'll help him. No choice, really." Another community project, another demand on time and energy already stretched to breaking. But he's right, there's no choice. Without the mill, grain can't become flour. Without flour, there's no bread. Without bread, well, you know how that ends. Morning comes too soon, the sky barely lightening when your father wakes you. Your body protests every movement, muscles stiff from yesterday's labour and the night's firefighting, but the fields won't plant themselves and time lost can't be recovered. Breakfast is more meagre than usual, the last of yesterday's bread with a thin broth. Your mother looks worried as she portions it out, though she says nothing. Food stores are running dangerously low, even with careful rationing. "I'll try fishing after planting," your father promises, noticing her concern. At the fields, conversation focuses on last night's fire and the miller's plans. He's already salvaging what he can, determined to have the mill functioning within days. Several men have volunteered to help rebuild after today's planting. Work resumes where it left off yesterday, everyone pushing through exhaustion to get seeds in the ground. The weather remains favourable, cool but not freezing, with light cloud cover preventing the soil from drying too quickly. Midday brings unexpected visitors. The steward again, but this time accompanied by 2 armed men wearing the Lord's colours. Their presence immediately puts everyone on edge. "The Lord requires workers for road repair," the steward announces. 5 men, 3 days' work. A murmur of dismay runs through the gathered peasants. 3 days away from planting and rebuilding could be disastrous, but refusing the Lord's demand isn't an option. "The road washed out near Westcross," the steward continues. "The Lord's supplies can't get through." Of course, this is about the Lord's convenience, not village welfare. The road in question leads to the nearest market town, vital for commerce but used primarily by merchants and nobility. Peasants rarely travel so far. The reeve reluctantly selects 5 men, trying to choose those whose family fields are already mostly planted. Your father isn't among them, thankfully. The chosen men look resigned rather than angry. This is simply how the system works. The Lord commands, peasants obey. As the armed men lead the selected workers away, you notice Eliza watching with a strange expression. "My uncle's among them," she explains when she catches your eye. "He has 3 young children and a wife. Who will finish his planting?" The question isn't rhetorical. In medieval village life, when someone can't complete essential work, others must step in, not from charity, but from necessity. The entire community depends on each field producing food. "We'll help," you find yourself saying. "My family can spare time." She looks surprised, then grateful. "We'd do the same for you." It's not an empty promise. This reciprocal assistance is how villages survive. Today, her uncle needs help. Tomorrow, your family might. No formal arrangements, no contracts, just the understood obligation to support the community that supports you. The afternoon brings news about the Westfield man who underwent ordeal by hot iron. His bandages were removed, revealing what everyone expected, an infected wound. In the logic of the ordeal, this proves his guilt. "They're taking his right hand," reports a man who witnessed the proceedings. "The Lord showed mercy. Could have been hanging." The matter-of-fact way he delivers this horrific information highlights how normalized such brutality is in your world. Amputation without anesthesia or proper medical care, likely infection afterward, possible death, all for stealing food while starving. "At least he lives," someone comments. No one argues. As planting continues, the conversation shifts to more immediate concerns. Weather predictions, seed quality, plans for rebuilding the mill. Life moves on because it must. Late afternoon brings one small victory. Your father catches 3 decent-sized fish in the stream. Not enough to feed the village, but enough to add precious protein to your family's evening meal. Your mother's face brightens at the sight. "We'll smoke what we don't eat tonight," she decides. "Make it last longer." Food preservation is a constant concern in a world without refrigeration. Smoking, drying, salting, pickling, these techniques aren't just cooking methods but survival strategies. Nothing can be wasted when scarcity is the norm. That evening, as your family enjoys fish soup enriched with wild greens, talk turns to the upcoming religious festival, Easter. In medieval England, church holidays provide rare breaks from labour and opportunities for community celebration. Father Ethelred says we should finish the church repairs before Holy Week, your mother mentions. Despite everything else demanding attention, planting, rebuilding homes, repairing the mill, the church remains a priority, not just for spiritual reasons, but practical ones. The church building serves as meeting place, storage facility and ceremonial centre. It's the heart of village social life. We'll need to make our confession soon, your father adds. Annual confession is required before Easter Communion, another religious obligation taken seriously in your world. As darkness falls, you help your sister prepare materials for rushlights, simple illumination made by dipping dried pith from rushes in animal fat. Not as good as proper candles, but better than nothing when tasks need completing after sunset. Working by this modest light, your mother mends clothing torn during the day's labour, while your father repairs a wooden tool handle. No one sits idle if they can help it. Every moment can be productive when survival depends on it. The fire burns low as bedtime approaches. Unlike your modern home with its thermostat, medieval temperature control consists of adding wood to the fire or putting on another layer of clothing. Tonight, wood conservation wins. You'll sleep slightly cold to save fuel. As your family settles for the night, huddled together on straw pallets for warmth, your father speaks quietly about tomorrow's plans. More planting, of course, help for Eliza's family, continued rebuilding. The simple rhythm of medieval life continues. Wake, work, eat what you can find, sleep, repeat. Days structured by sunlight and seasons rather than clocks and calendars. Priorities dictated by immediate survival needs rather than ambition or entertainment. There's a certain clarity to this existence that modern life rarely offers. Each day brings tangible accomplishments. Seeds planted, shelters improved, food gathered. Progress measured in direct physical terms rather than abstract achievements. As sleep approaches, your mind drifts to today's small victories. Seeds in the ground, fish in the pot, the mill wheel saved from fire, your sister's continued recovery. In a world where survival isn't guaranteed, these modest successes deserve recognition. Outside, an owl calls somewhere in the darkness. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. It always does, but tonight your family is together, fed and sheltered. By medieval standards, that's about as good as it gets. Days blend into a rhythm as spring fully arrives. The village transforms, not just from rebuilding, but from nature's renewal. Bare trees sprout tender green leaves, the muddy ground firms underfoot, birdsong fills the morning air. With planting finished, attention shifts to other essential tasks. The mill reconstruction is a priority. Without it, grain can't become flour, and flour is the backbone of your diet. A dozen men work on the structure daily, raising new timber frames where the old building stood. The miller watches anxiously. His entire livelihood depends on this reconstruction, but he's not just concerned about himself. Need it running before first harvest, he keeps saying. Can't have grain spoiling for lack of grinding. You're helping carry stones for the mill foundation when you overhear an argument between the miller and the village reeve. 2 measures per sack is highway robbery, the reeve says firmly. I lost everything, the miller counters. How else will I recover? They're arguing about the miller's fee, the portion of grain he keeps as payment for grinding. Traditionally, it's been 1 measure per sack. Doubling it would significantly impact every family's food supply. 1.5 measures the reeve finally offers, just until Michaelmas. The miller reluctantly agrees. It's a classic example of medieval economics. No money changes hands, but goods and services are carefully negotiated. The outcome affects everyone's survival. At home, your mother and sister work on their own crucial project, the garden plot. Every peasant family maintains a small garden near their dwelling for growing vegetables and herbs. With the recent destruction and rebuilding, these plots need complete restoration. "The beans go here," your mother instructs, marking sections with sticks. "Cabbages there, leeks along that side." These garden vegetables won't be ready for months, but planning happens now. Unlike the open fields where grains grow, these garden plots are the domain of women, providing crucial dietary variety through the growing season. Your sister looks healthier now, though still thin. Everyone is thin. The period between planting and first harvest is traditionally called the hungry gap, stored food running out before new crops are ready. This year, with winter stores destroyed in the raid, the gap is more like a chasm. "Look what I found," your sister exclaims suddenly, holding up a clutch of tiny eggs from a ground-nesting bird. 6 small speckled orbs rest in her palm, a precious protein source. "Good eyes," your mother praises. "We'll have them with dinner. Small windfalls like this can make the difference between mere hunger and actual starvation." Medieval peasants develop sharp eyes for foraging opportunities. Wild greens, mushrooms, berries, nuts, bird eggs, anything to supplement meagre rations. That afternoon, you join a group heading to the forest edge. Officially, you're gathering firewood, always in demand and depleted by the reconstruction efforts. Unofficially, you're hoping to snare a rabbit or collect early mushrooms. The forest itself is technically the Lord's property and hunting is forbidden to peasants, but gathering deadwood is permitted, and if a rabbit happens to blunder into a snare while you're collecting sticks, well, accidents happen. Edwin, the older man who helped during the raid, shows younger villagers how to set simple snares using twine and flexible branches. Check them at dawn, he advises, and don't get caught by the forester. The Lord's Forester patrols woodland, enforcing rules against poaching. Punishment for hunting the Lord's deer can be severe, blinding or maiming in extreme cases. Nobody risks taking deer, but small game like rabbits and squirrels are worth the gamble when families are hungry. While gathering wood, you notice Eliza working nearby. Since helping with her uncle's planting, you've spoken more frequently. There's no formal courting process for peasants, no dating as modern people understand it. Relationships develop through working together. Village gatherings and stolen conversations like this. "My mother says the first strawberries are showing flowers," she mentions. "Early this year." "Good sign," you reply. "Maybe harvest will be early too." These mundane observations carry weight in your world. Crop timing isn't just conversation, it's survival information. Noting when plants flower, when birds nest, when certain insects appear. These observations help predict weather patterns and plan agricultural work. As your group returns to the village, laden with firewood and a few early mushrooms, but no rabbits yet, you pass by the village green where Father Ethelred supervises children practicing for the Easter pageant. Medieval religious observances aren't just solemn services, they include community performances with villagers playing biblical roles in dramatized stories. Children are rehearsing the resurrection scene, with a small boy struggling to remember his lines as an angel. "No, no," the priest corrects patiently. "You say, 'He is not here, for he has risen,' before you point to the tomb." These religious plays serve multiple purposes: education for the largely illiterate population, community bonding, and entertainment in a world without modern diversions. They're taken seriously despite amateur performances. Nearby, older children receive rudimentary education. Medieval peasants don't attend school as we understand it, but some basic knowledge transfers through informal teaching. A group of boys learns woodworking from the village carpenter. Several girls practice spinning wool under an older woman's guidance. Hold the distaff higher, she instructs. Keep tension on the thread. Skills pass from generation to generation through this apprenticeship model. There are no textbooks, no formal classes, just observation, practice, and correction. By adulthood, everyone possesses practical abilities essential for survival, even without formal education. Your own education has happened the same way. Learning farming from your father, foraging from your mother, religious knowledge from the priest. Book learning is for nobility and clergy, not peasants. Most serfs, including your parents, cannot read or write. That evening brings a rare treat. The travelling peddler arrives. Even in normal times, his visits occur only a few times yearly. After the recent troubles, his appearance feels almost miraculous. The entire village gathers as he unpacks his goods. He carries items impossible to produce locally: needles, pins, small metal tools, salt, spices, thread, ribbons. Luxuries by medieval standards, necessities for many tasks. 3 eggs for a needle, he offers to a woman who lost her sewing implements in the fire. No coins change hands in most transactions. Medieval peasants operate largely without money, using barter instead. The woman nods, running home to fetch eggs. A steep price, but needles are precious metal items she can't make herself. Your mother eyes a packet of salt longingly. Since the raid, this essential preservative has been scarce. Without it, smoking and drying are the only food preservation methods available to your family. What for the small salt bag? She asks. The peddler considers. Those woolens you're making? 1 finished cap. She nods. It's a fair trade, her labour and materials for his goods. She's been spinning and knitting in every spare moment, creating garments that can be traded when opportunities like this arise. The peddler also brings news, always a valuable commodity in an isolated world without mass communication. Kings raising taxes for another war in France, he tells the gathered villagers. Lord Northbrook had to sell 3 villages to pay his share. This sparks concerned murmurs. When lords sell villages, serfs are transferred to new masters. Sometimes conditions improve under new ownership, often they worsen. Any word of Lord Westfield's raiders? Someone asks. The peddler nods grimly. They hit Sutton last week, burned the mill there too. This news confirms suspicions that the attacks are systematic, not random, a deliberate campaign by one lord against another, with peasants caught in the middle. As darkness falls, the peddler is offered shelter in the church, the usual arrangement for travellers. Villagers gradually disperse to their homes, discussing the day's exchanges and news. Your family's shelter is slowly improving. The roof leaks less, the walls block more wind. It's still primitive by any modern standard. A single room with a central hearth, no windows, no chimney beyond a hole in the roof, no furniture except a crude bench and table. Dinner consists of barley pottage with foraged greens and those precious bird eggs your sister found. The small protein addition makes everyone's mood lighter, despite the worrying news about continued raids. After eating, your father works by firelight, repairing fishing nets. Your mother continues her knitting, fingers moving skillfully even in dim light. These evening hours are productive time, too valuable to waste on mere rest. Will there be dancing at Easter? Your sister asks suddenly. Your mother smiles. If the priest allows it. Medieval religious festivals balance sacred observance with desperately needed recreation. After church services, communities often enjoy rare opportunities for music, dancing, and games. These celebrations provide crucial psychological relief from relentless work and hardship. Or only if the church roof is finished, your father adds practically. The reconstruction of the partially damaged church has continued alongside other rebuilding efforts, with most work happening after daily agricultural labour. As the fire burns low, conversation dwindles. Your family prepares for sleep, arranging straw pallets around the dying embers. The smoky interior might seem intolerable to modern sensibilities, but to medieval people, it's simply home. Sleep comes quickly after another day of physical labour. Your dreams are simple: food, warmth, safety. The basic needs that dominate waking thoughts don't disappear in slumber. Morning arrives with unexpected excitement. The rabbit snares yielded results. 2 men return from checking them, each carrying a couple of small conies. Not enough to feed everyone, but a significant boost for the families who set the traps. Your family's snare caught nothing, which is disappointing but not surprising. Trapping is part skill, part luck. Edwin receives a portion from another family's catch, though, repayment for his teaching. Again, the web of mutual obligation that defines village life ensures resources circulate to those who contribute. Today's primary community project is finishing the church roof before Easter celebrations. Even those skeptical about religion recognise the church's importance as community infrastructure. You join other young men hauling bundles of reeds for thatching. The thatcher directs operations from atop the partially damaged roof. He's one of few villagers with specialised skills beyond basic farming knowledge. Such expertise elevates his status slightly, though he remains a serf like everyone else. "Tighter bundles," he shouts down. "Don't get sloppy now. Thatching is skilled work requiring specific techniques to ensure water-resistant results. A poorly thatched roof leaks, rots, and requires replacement sooner, wasting precious resources and labour." While working, you notice increased traffic on the road passing the village. People from surrounding areas heading to the local market town. It's market day, held weekly in larger settlements where peasants can trade surplus goods, when they have any, and lords can sell agricultural products from their domain. Your village is too small to host markets, but some residents occasionally travel to participate. Today, no one from your community joins the market goers. There's nothing to sell after the raid, and rebuilding takes priority over trading. Next week, perhaps, your father says, noticing your gaze following the travellers. If fishing improves. By midday, the church roof nears completion. Father Ethelred brings bread for workers, a small offering from church stores. The loaves are dark, but fresher than what most families have been eating, and the gesture is appreciated. God's blessing on your labour, the priest says, distributing food. The church must be ready to celebrate his resurrection. After eating, work continues with renewed energy. The roof will be finished today, allowing final interior preparations for Easter services. Near the partially rebuilt mill, you spot the miller's daughter speaking with the Lord's steward. Their conversation appears tense, heads close together, voices too low to overhear. When they notice others watching, they quickly separate. "Strange," comments Watt, working beside you. "She's not one to consort with the manor folk." The interaction sparks quiet speculation. Relations between manor officials and village women occasionally lead to trouble. Unwanted advances, coerced relationships, children born with uncertain status. The power imbalance makes such situations particularly problematic. "Her father should mind that," another man mutters. "Nothing good comes from mixing with those above your station." Medieval society functions on clear hierarchical boundaries. Relationships that cross those boundaries create complications everyone prefers to avoid. By late afternoon, the church roof stands complete. A small celebration breaks out. Nothing elaborate, just a moment of collective satisfaction at a finished task. Someone produces a crude wooden flute, playing a simple tune while children clap along. These spontaneous moments of joy punctuate the otherwise grueling rhythm of medieval life. Brief, precious instances when work pauses and community bonds strengthen through shared pleasure. Your sister joins other girls in a circle dance, her recent illness seemingly forgotten in the moment. Your mother watches with visible relief, her child's recovery manifest in this simple display of energy and happiness. The music draws Eliza nearer. You find yourself standing awkwardly beside her, unsure what to say outside the context of work. Medieval youth have no dating protocols, no established courtship rituals for common folk. Nice roof, she offers finally, nodding toward the church. Should keep the rain out, you agree. It's hardly romantic dialogue, but in your world, practical concerns dominate everything, even attraction. A potential partner's work ethic, physical strength and practical skills matter more than romantic notions. Marriage is primarily an economic arrangement, a combining of labour capacity for mutual survival. As evening approaches, the brief celebration winds down. Work remains. Animals to tend, gardens to water, food to prepare. The rhythm of labour never truly stops. Your father returns from checking his fishing lines with a single decent-sized fish, enough to flavour the evening pottage but not much more. Still, the family receives the contribution gratefully. Any protein improves the otherwise bland barley porridge that forms your daily sustenance. While eating, your father shares news heard from men working on the mill. The Lord's called able men to training next week, he says. Archery practice. Military training periodically interrupts agricultural work. Medieval lords maintain the right to call upon peasants for defence. While professional soldiers handle most warfare, serfs can be conscripted for local defence or to fulfil the lord's obligations to higher nobles. For how long? Your mother asks, concern evident. Time away from fields means potential food shortages later. Just 2 days, your father answers. After Easter. It's an inconvenience, but not catastrophic. The timing between planting and first harvest allows some flexibility for non-agricultural activities. As night falls, your family discusses plans for Easter Sunday. The holiday brings rare privileges, better food, if available, new clothes, when possible, and an afternoon free from labour after religious obligations. I've saved a bit of honey, your mother reveals, for small cakes. This surprising luxury has been hidden away for a special occasion. Honey is precious, a natural sweetener in a world without sugar for common folk. Its preservation for Easter demonstrates the holiday's significance in medieval life. With anticipation of tomorrow's modest celebration, your family settles for sleep. Outside, a gentle rain begins falling, good for newly planted fields, less pleasant for those whose shelter repairs remain incomplete. The rain patters on your roof, mercifully not penetrating the recently improved thatch. As you drift towards sleep, your thoughts turn to simple hopes. Continued fair weather for crops, no new raids, perhaps a successful hunt. Medieval dreams aren't grand aspirations for wealth or status advancement. Social mobility barely exists. Dreams focus instead on immediate needs: food, safety, community, the small pleasures possible within a highly constrained existence. Yet within these constraints, medieval people find meaning and satisfaction. The shared struggle against hardship, the small victories of survival, the community bonds forged through interdependence, the rhythm of seasonal celebrations breaking the monotony of labour. Through modern eyes, medieval peasant life seems unrelentingly harsh. Through medieval eyes, it simply is what it is. The only reality known, accepted with a stoicism modern people might find difficult to comprehend. Rain continues falling gently as sleep claims you. Tomorrow brings Easter, a brief respite in the constant work of survival. For now, that's enough to look forward to. Easter morning dawns clear and bright, as if nature itself acknowledges the holy day. Your family wakes early, not for work this time, but for church. Everyone dons their cleanest clothes, which is a relative term after the raid and rebuilding. Still, efforts have been made. Faces scrubbed with cold water, hair combed with wooden combs, small repairs made to torn garments. Here, your mother says, pinning a tiny sprig of greenery to your sister's dress. This modest decoration is as close to finery as most peasants manage. Medieval Easter isn't the chocolate bunny celebration of modern times. It's the most important religious festival of the Christian year. A day when even the humblest serf stops working to attend church. After the long restrictions of Lent, it's also a rare occasion for communal celebration and slightly better food. The whole village walks together to the newly repaired church. The atmosphere feels lighter than usual, a collective exhale after weeks of hardship. Children run ahead, excited for the day's special activities. Adults talk quietly, enjoying the simple pleasure of unhurried conversation. Inside the small wooden church, everyone stands, no pews or chairs for the congregation. Only the elderly and infirm might sit on brought stools. Medieval church services aren't participatory events where lay people read scripture or lead prayers. The priest conducts the Latin Mass while villagers mostly observe, kneeling or standing at appropriate moments. Father Ethelred wears his finest vestments for Easter, threadbare though they may be. The altar is decorated with early spring flowers, pale primroses, bright celandines, and delicate wood anemones gathered by village children. Christus resurrexit, the priest intones. Vera resurrexit, responds the small choir of village boys he's trained to sing the Latin replies. Most villagers understand little of the Latin service, but they know the rhythms, the expected responses, the moments to kneel or cross themselves. Religious instruction happens through sermons delivered in English after the formal Latin portions. Today's sermon focuses on resurrection and renewal, themes that resonate powerfully with a community rebuilding after destruction. Father Ethelred draws explicit parallels between Christ's resurrection and the village's recovery from the raid. As our Lord rose from death, so too shall our village rise from ashes, he declares. Through faith and labour, God's will be done. The sermon continues with practical moral guidance, reminders about tithing, the church's share of produce, warnings against sin, and encouragement for charity among neighbours. Medieval religion blends spiritual concerns with everyday governance, the church serving as both moral compass and administrative structure. After the service ends, the day's true celebration begins. Tables are set up on the village green, simple plank boards on trestles. Each family contributes what they can to a communal feast. By modern standards, it's a meagre spread, but after weeks of near starvation, it seems abundant. Your mother's honey cakes draw admiration. Small, dense patties of barley flour sweetened with precious honey, they're a once-yearly treat. The village baker, who lost his oven in the raid and has only recently rebuilt it, contributes actual wheat bread, lighter and finer than the daily barley loaves. Real wheat, your sister whispers in awe, taking her small portion. Someone has slaughtered a pig, a significant sacrifice of future breeding potential for immediate celebration. The rich smell of roasting pork fills the air. The meat will be stretched to provide just a morsel for everyone, but even a taste of fat and protein feels luxurious after weeks of thin gruel. You notice Eliza with her family across the green. Her mother looks thin and worn, but today she smiles, watching her younger children play a ring game with others. Eliza catches your eye and gives a small nod. In the context of medieval village life, it's a meaningful acknowledgement. Go talk to her if you want, your mother says quietly, noticing the exchange. It's a feast day. Social rules relax slightly during celebrations. Young people may interact more freely, though always within sight of the community. Medieval courtship happens in plain view. No private dates, no unsupervised meetings. Before you can decide whether to approach Eliza, a commotion at the village edge draws everyone's attention. Riders approach. 3 men wearing the Lord's colours, led by the steward. Their arrival during Easter celebrations is unusual and concerning. Conversation dies as the horsemen reach the green. The steward dismounts while his companions remain on horseback, hands resting meaningfully on sword hilts. The message is clear. This isn't a social visit. The Lord sends Easter greetings, the steward announces, his formal words at odds with his grim expression. A collective murmur of acknowledgement ripples through the gathered villagers. The proper response would include expressions of gratitude for the Lord's attention, but enthusiasm is notably lacking. He also brings news, the steward continues. Lord Westfield's men attacked Thornbridge yesterday. 8 dead. Thornbridge lies just a half-day's walk from your village. The conflict is moving closer. Fear ripples through the crowd, subtle but palpable in shifted stances and exchanged glances. The Lord requires all able men for defence training tomorrow at dawn, the steward declares. Bring any weapons you possess. Those without will be provided staves. This announcement transforms the celebration instantly. Men exchange concerned looks. Women draw children closer. The brief respite from worry evaporates. We're still planting the north field, protests the reeve cautiously. The steward's expression hardens. The Lord's command is clear: dawn tomorrow. Without waiting for further discussion, he remounts and the 3 riders depart, leaving a community whose celebration has been effectively ended. For a few moments, silence hangs heavy over the gathering. Then, gradually, conversation resumes, but the tone has shifted. Speculative whispers replace earlier laughter. The feast continues because no one would waste precious food, but the joyous atmosphere is gone. Will there be fighting here? Your sister asks, her voice small with fear. Oh no, your father answers with more conviction than he likely feels. The Lord will protect his property. His choice of words is telling. Protection of property, not people. In the feudal worldview, serfs are essentially living assets attached to the land. Your safety matters primarily as it affects your productive value. Despite the worrying news, the community attempts to salvage something of the holiday. After eating, traditional Easter games begin: egg-rolling contests for children, wrestling matches for young men, dancing to simple music played on handmade instruments. You join a group of young men in an archery contest using crude bows. The activity takes on new significance given tomorrow's mandatory training. Most peasants have limited experience with weapons. Hunting is forbidden to serfs in most places, so archery skills develop through informal practice rather than regular use. Aim higher, advises Edwin, watching your arrow fall short of the target, a stuffed sack hanging from a tree branch. Allow for the drop. Your next shot comes closer, but still misses. Accuracy with a medieval longbow requires years of practice, not hours. English kings will eventually mandate regular archery training for peasants, creating the legendary corps of longbowmen that dominates later medieval battlefields. But that systematic military preparation lies in the future. As afternoon wanes, the dancing begins in earnest. A circle forms on the green, with musicians providing lively tunes on pipe, drum and fiddle. Medieval village dances aren't the elaborate court affairs of nobility, but simpler ring dances and line formations where everyone can participate, regardless of skill. Your mother nudges you toward the circle where Eliza stands with other young women. The encouragement isn't subtle, but it reflects medieval practicality about courtship. Marriage typically happens in the late teens or early 20s for peasants, with parents actively promoting suitable matches. "They're playing 3 around," Eliza says as you awkwardly join the circle near her. It's a common dance where 3 people link arms and spin within the larger circle. "I know the steps," you reply, though dancing isn't your strength. Few medieval peasant men would admit to enjoying dance, but participation is expected at festivals. The musicians pick up tempo, and the dance grows more energetic. For a while, the community surrenders to the simple joy of movement and music. Children weave between dancing adults. Elders clap along from the sidelines. Even the priest watches with benevolent approval. Religious strictures relaxed for the holiday. In these moments, medieval life reveals its surprising pockets of joy amid hardship. Celebration isn't just permitted, but necessary, a pressure valve releasing the tension of constant labour and precarious survival. As the dance ends, you find yourself standing near Eliza, both slightly breathless from exertion. "My father says you're joining the archery practice," she says. "Not much choice," you answer with a shrug. "My uncle was an archer for the previous lord," she offers. "He says the trick is in the fingers, not the arm." This small exchange, practical advice wrapped in personal connection, exemplifies medieval courtship. No flowery declarations or romantic gestures, just the gradual building of practical alliance through shared knowledge and community ties. The celebration continues until sunset, though subdued by the steward's announcement. As darkness falls, families gather their belongings and head home, saving precious candles and lamp oil by sleeping with the sun's schedule. Your family walks together through the dusky village. Despite the day's worries, there's a contentment that comes from rare leisure and slightly fuller bellies. Even medieval peasants recognize the psychological value of occasional respite from toil. "The honey cakes were perfect," your father tells your mother, a simple compliment that brings a smile to her tired face. At home, your family settles for the night with unusual ease. The physical release of dancing and the slightly more abundant food creates a deeper exhaustion than regular labor. A pleasant heaviness in limbs and eyelids. Sleep comes quickly, but doesn't last. Well before dawn, a pounding on your door jolts everyone awake. "Up, everyone up," comes a shout from outside. Your father rushes to the door to find the Reeve and several other men, faces grim in the pre-dawn darkness. "Raiders," the Reeve says without preamble, "spotted an hour's ride south, moving this way." The warning spreads through. Between 1929 and 1933, roughly 25% of all Americans lost their jobs, over 9,000 banks collapsed, and entire nations fell into economic ruin from a financial disaster that spread like wildfire across continents. The crash was swift and merciless, but for those caught in its grip, life somehow continued in the shadow of economic devastation. Here's what life was really like during the Great Depression. Hey, quick thing before we start. If you actually listen to these regularly, hit like or subscribe. I always wonder where everyone's at, so comment your city and what time it is. Weird to think some of you are having breakfast in London while I'm recording this at night here in the States. Alright, tonight it's the Great Depression, but before we go anywhere, get comfortable. Seriously. Adjust those pillows. Pull up that blanket, because where we're going, you're going to want to be cozy. Your eyes snap open to darkness. The room is ice cold. October in New York, 1929, and coal for heating is already being rationed in your building. Your stomach growls painfully, not like the mild hunger when you skip lunch. This is day 3 without a proper meal hunger, the kind that makes your body literally start to consume itself. You're not sleeping on the street, not yet, but the mattress beneath you is thin and lumpy, nothing like your comfortable bed right now. Your apartment is small, but it's shelter. For how much longer though? That's the question keeping you up at night. 3 days ago you had a decent job at a factory. 3 days ago you had savings. 3 days ago the stock market was riding high and America was prosperous. Then came Black Thursday. The thing about economic disasters is they happen in slow motion and all at once. It's like watching a train wreck from inside the train. For years, people had been pouring money into stocks, borrowing cash to buy more stocks, using those stocks as collateral to borrow even more. It was basically a nationwide pyramid scheme, and on October 24th, 1929, the whole thing came crashing down. Extra, extra. The paperboy's voice cuts through the morning fog as you walk to the employment office. Stock market collapses, worst crash in history. You remember yesterday's scenes outside the New York Stock Exchange, men in expensive suits with blank expressions. The wealthy jumping from buildings isn't just a myth, it actually happened. Not in the numbers people imagine, but enough that ambulance crews were kept busy scraping the remains of once wealthy brokers off the pavement. Did you hear about George? One man whispers to another in the growing unemployment line. Lost everything. His wife found him in the garage with the car running. At least he had a car, the other man replies. The unemployment office is chaos. Hundreds of people, maybe thousands, all fighting for the same few jobs. The man behind the counter looks exhausted, his eyes bloodshot. Nothing today, he tells you without looking up. Try again tomorrow. But tomorrow will be the same, and the day after, and the day after that. Wait, I need you to understand what this actually felt like. This wasn't just a bad day in the stock market. This was the entire economic system of the United States, the richest country on earth, completely collapsing. Imagine every financial certainty in your life vanishing overnight. The market will recover, the newspapers say. President Herbert Hoover makes reassuring statements. Prosperity is just around the corner, but you're not stupid. You can see the truth with your own eyes. On your way home, you pass a bank. There's a crowd outside, growing larger by the minute. People pounding on the locked doors, some crying, others shouting. A bank run. When people lose faith in banks, they all rush to withdraw their money at once. But here's the thing about banks in 1929. They don't keep all your money on hand. They lend it out. So when everyone wants their cash at the same time, the bank fails. They can't just keep our money, a woman screams, her face red with anger. That's my life savings in there. But they can, and they did. Between 1930 and 1933, nearly half of all American banks failed. If your money was in one of them, it was just gone. No FDIC insurance, no government bailout, just gone. You know what's really wild? Before the crash, the economy seemed unstoppable. The Roaring Twenties were exactly that. Roaring with excess, jazz, illegal booze during Prohibition, and money that seemed to multiply like magic in the stock market. 10 grand your neighbour had boasted last month. Started with just $500 last year. The market only goes up, friend. Only goes up. He jumped from his 10th floor apartment 2 days after the crash. By evening, you're back in your apartment, counting the money you have left. $6.17. The rent is due in a week. $5. That leaves $1 and change for food to last, well, until you find work, whenever that might be. You think about your parents back in Chicago. Could you move back home? The thought makes your stomach twist with shame. 30 years old and crawling back to your parents, but shame doesn't fill an empty stomach. On the street below, a commotion draws you to the window. A family is being evicted, their furniture, clothes and personal belongings thrown carelessly onto the sidewalk. The mother is crying, clutching a baby to her chest. The father stands motionless, his expression blank with shock. Two small children cling to their mother's skirt, confused and frightened. This scene is playing out all across America. By 1932, thousands of families will be evicted every day in major cities. The next morning, you join what people are starting to call a bread line. Hundreds of people waiting for free soup and a piece of bread from a charity kitchen. The line stretches around the block. You take your place at the end, swallowing your pride. This is survival now. "First time?" asks the man in front of you, not unkindly. You nod. "You'll get used to it," he says. "Was a bank manager myself before all this. Now look at me." He gestures to his threadbare coat and worn shoes. That's the thing about the Depression that's hard to understand now. It wasn't just the poor who suffered. The middle class was decimated. People who thought they were secure, professionals, managers, skilled workers, suddenly found themselves destitute. "The thing is," the former bank manager continues, "nobody's immune. I had customers, millionaires on paper, who lost everything in a day. One fella came in to withdraw $1 million. By the time we closed that afternoon, his stocks weren't worth the paper they were printed on." The soup, when you finally get it after 3 hours of waiting, is thin and flavourless. The bread is stale, but it's food. You wolf it down, trying not to think about when you'll eat again. Back in your apartment, you turn on the radio, one luxury you've maintained. President Hoover is speaking, assuring the nation that the economy is fundamentally sound, that prosperity will return. "He's full of shit," says your neighbour through the thin wall. "Sorry for the language," he adds, probably remembering your shared wall. "No, you're right," you call back. This casual conversation through the wall has become your main social interaction. "Got any coffee?" he asks. "Just the grounds from yesterday, already used them twice." "Bring 'em over, I'll show you how to get a third cup out of them." And this is how people survived. Sharing, stretching, making do. Coffee grounds used multiple times. Soup made from ketchup and hot water. Clothing mended and remended until the original fabric was more patch than garment. The crazy part, the stores were full of food. The problem wasn't supply. It was that people had no money to buy anything. Farmers were destroying crops because prices had fallen so low it wasn't worth bringing them to market, while people in cities were starving. In Iowa, farmers poured milk onto highways rather than sell it for pennies. In California, oranges rotted in vast piles while children in New York developed diseases from malnutrition. It's one of history's cruelest ironies, starvation amidst plenty. The next day brings rumours that the stock market is recovering. People are hopeful again. Maybe this will all blow over quickly. Maybe Hoover is right about prosperity being just around the corner. You hear of a factory across town that might be hiring. You spend your precious pennies on a trolley fare, only to find hundreds of men already waiting when you arrive. Some have been there since dawn. They're taking applications, one man tells you, but they've got 20 spots and there must be 500 of us here. You wait anyway. What choice do you have? By noon, a factory foreman comes out. No more jobs today, he shouts. Try again next week. The crowd's disappointment is palpable, a wave of despair washing over hundreds of faces. Men turn away, shoulders slumped, shuffling back to wherever they came from. But one man doesn't move. That's it? He shouts. We wait all morning and that's it? The foreman ignores him, turning to go back inside. My kids are hungry, the man screams, his voice breaking. My kids haven't eaten in 2 days. Other men join in now, their voices rising in anger and desperation. For a moment, it feels like the crowd might rush the factory gates. There's a dangerous energy building, the kind that precedes violence. You back away. You've heard about riots breaking out in other cities, hungry, desperate people looting grocery stores and warehouses. You don't want to be part of that, but you understand it now. Hunger does things to people. It strips away civilization, reduces humans to their most basic instincts. Your own empty stomach has been teaching you this lesson. You find yourself walking past neighbourhoods you'd never normally enter, the wealthy areas, the homes with lights still on, cars still in driveways, smoke still curling from chimneys, the people who survived the crash, or even profited from it, buying stocks at rock-bottom prices. The divide between rich and poor existed before the crash, but now it's a canyon, gaping and impossible to ignore. Here's something wild about economic depressions. They're not equal opportunity disasters. While millions were plunged into poverty, others barely noticed. The truly wealthy, old money, not the nouveau riche who gambled everything on stocks, continued much as before. Their servants might have accepted lower wages, their portfolios might have taken a hit, but they weren't standing in bread lines. Walking back to your apartment, you pass a Hooverville, one of the shanty towns springing up in cities across America, named mockingly after the president who seemed unable or unwilling to address the crisis. Makeshift shelters cobbled together from scrap wood, cardboard, tin sheets, whatever people could find. Entire families living in conditions you wouldn't keep animals in. You wonder how many of those people had normal lives just weeks ago. 2 children play in the dirt outside one of the shacks using sticks and rocks as toys. They're thin, their clothes dirty and too small, but they're laughing. Children adapt. Somehow they find joy even in the darkest circumstances. The next morning brings news that reverberates through the city like a thunderclap. The stock market, which had been recovering slightly, has crashed again. Any hope of a quick resolution to the crisis vanishes. You think about that neighbour who boasted of his market gains, the one who jumped. You understand him better now. A week passes, your rent comes due. The landlord, a man named Gianelli, who's always been fair in the past, knocks on your door. I know things are tough, he says, not meeting your eyes. But I got the bank breathing down my neck. If I don't collect, I lose the building. You hand over your $5, leaving yourself with just over $1 for how long? You don't know. Thanks, he says, pocketing the money. Then, unexpectedly, he pulls out a paper bag. My wife made extra stew, said to give it to you. The simple kindness brings tears to your eyes. You're too choked up to speak, so you just nod your thanks. That night, as you savour each bite of the stew, actual meat, vegetables, flavour, you listen to the radio. The news is spreading beyond America now. The economic disaster isn't contained. It's jumping borders, crossing oceans. In Germany, already struggling under the weight of war reparations from the Treaty of Versailles, banks are failing. In Britain, unemployment is soaring. The global economy is interconnected in ways people barely understood until it all began to unravel. You think about your job at the factory, making parts that were shipped overseas. The factory closed because orders dried up. Those orders dried up because companies in other countries were failing. Those companies were failing because their customers had no money. And round it goes, a perfect circle of economic destruction. The stew is gone too quickly. You use bread to wipe the bowl clean, not wasting a drop. Then you lie back on your bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what tomorrow will bring. Outside, the city that never sleeps has taken on a different rhythm. Not the frenetic energy of prosperity, but the restless stirring of worry, of hunger, of fear. In just a few short weeks, the world has changed completely, and the depression is only just beginning. What's happening in America is just the first tremor. The economic earthquake will soon shake the entire world, toppling governments, birthing extremist movements, redrawing the map of global power. In Germany, a political party that garnered only 2.6% of the vote in 1928 will soon find fertile ground for their message among the unemployed and desperate. Their leader, a failed artist with a talent for channeling anger, will rise on the tide of economic misery. In Britain, the pound sterling, once the world's most stable currency, will be forced off the gold standard, a humiliation for a nation that prided itself on financial strength. In Japan, military leaders will point to the economic crisis as proof that their nation must expand, must secure resources and markets by force if necessary. But all of that is still to come. For now, in late 1929, there is just the dawning realization that the prosperity of the Roaring Twenties was built on sand. The party is over, the bill has come due, and ordinary people, millions upon millions of them, are the ones who will pay it. As you drift towards sleep, your empty stomach growling, you wonder how long this can last. Surely things will improve soon. The government will step in, the economy will recover, life will return to normal. But deep down, this isn't a temporary setback. This is something new, something vast and terrible. This is the Great Depression, and it's just getting started. You've made it to 1930 somehow. The winter was brutal, not just the cold, but the grinding uncertainty of each day. Every morning, the same question. Will I eat today? Your apartment is gone now. Couldn't make rent after December. You're staying at the YMCA when you can scrape together 15 cents for a bed on park benches when you can't. Central Park has become an unofficial campground for the newly homeless. At night, if you squint, the clusters of makeshift shelters almost look like a festival. Almost. "Morning, Professor," says Joe, nodding as you emerge from your spot beneath a cluster of pine trees. Joe was a construction worker before the crash. Now he's the unofficial mayor of this section of the park. He calls everyone Professor, regardless of their former occupation. "Any leads today?" you ask, stretching your stiff limbs. "Heard they're hiring at the docks. Just day labour, but it's something." You nod your thanks and head toward the harbour. The docks are always worth checking, though the competition for work is fierce. 500 men might show up for 20 spots unloading cargo, if there's even cargo to unload. International trade is drying up fast. The scene at the docks is exactly as you expected, a sea of desperate men. Some have been dockhands all their lives, their bodies shaped by years of lifting and hauling. Others, like you, are newcomers to this world, former office workers and shopkeepers. The foreman appears at 6 sharp. "Need 20 today," he shouts above the murmur of the crowd. The press of bodies is immediate, everyone surging forward. You're caught in the middle, pushed and pulled. Someone's elbow catches your ribs. Another man steps on your foot, but you keep moving forward. The foreman points randomly. You. Each man selected quickly steps aside, relief washing over their faces. By some miracle, you're chosen. Maybe it's because you've managed to keep your clothes relatively clean. Maybe it's just dumb luck. Either way, you're working today. The work is brutal, unloading crates from a ship that's come in from South America. Coffee mostly. The irony isn't lost on you. You haven't tasted real coffee in months, making do with reused grounds or chicory substitutes. Now you're handling crates of the stuff, worth more than you'll earn in a month. Slow boat, comments one of the veteran dockhands during a rare break. Usually 3 ships a week from Brazil, now maybe 1. Why's that, you ask, gulping water from a communal bucket. Tariffs, he spits. Goddamn smoot Hawley. President signed it last month, raised taxes on imports to protect American jobs. But you know what happens when we tax their goods? They tax ours back, you reply. Bingo, Professor. He doesn't know Joe calls you that too. So now nobody's buying, nobody's selling, and we're all screwed 6 ways from Sunday. The Smoot Hawley tariff. You'd read about it in the papers. Over 1,000 economists had signed a petition begging President Hoover not to sign it. But Congress pushed it through and Hoover caved. Now international trade, already wounded by the crash, was being strangled by protectionist policies. By noon, your back is screaming and your hands are raw, but you've earned $1, a whole dollar for 6 hours of back-breaking labour. 5 years ago, you'd have scoffed at such wages. Today, it feels like winning the lottery. Same time tomorrow? You ask the foreman as he hands you your pay. He shakes his head. Ships unloaded, nothing else scheduled this week. And just like that, you're unemployed again. You use a nickel to ride the subway uptown, not towards Central Park, but to Grand Central Station. You've made a decision. New York is dying. Time to try somewhere else. The station is both busy and eerily quiet. People move with purpose, but there's a hushed quality, as if everyone's afraid to make too much noise. The giant departures board clacks as it updates. You scan for the cheapest destinations. Chicago? Your parents are there, but the shame of returning home is still too much. Cleveland, Pittsburgh, more industrial cities, probably suffering just as much as New York. Then you see it, Kansas City, the heart of farming country. Surely farmers are still doing okay. People always need to eat, right? And the ticket is just $8.75. You can almost afford it with your day's wages. You approach the ticket counter. When's the next train to Kansas City? 8:15 tonight, says the bored-looking clerk. I'll take it. You count out your money carefully, almost all of your dollar from today, plus most of your meagre savings. You're left with 45 cents to your name, but you have a ticket out. The train is crowded, mostly with people leaving the city rather than coming to it. You find a seat next to an elderly man reading a newspaper. Heading west? He asks, folding his paper. Kansas City, you reply. Thought I might find work on the farms. He gives you a look that's half pity, half amusement. Might want to rethink that plan, son. He hands you his newspaper, folded to show a headline, Dust storms ravage plains, crops destroyed. The article describes apocalyptic scenes across Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. Years of over-farming combined with drought have turned the topsoil to dust. Massive clouds of it sweeping across the plains, burying farms and towns. Been farming outside Wichita for 40 years, the old man says. Never seen anything like it. Dust gets into everything. Your clothes, your food, your lungs. Can't grow a damn thing. So why are you going back, you ask. It's still home, he says simply. Where else would I go? You stare out the window as the train rumbles west, watching America roll by. The countryside should be beautiful in June, but instead it looks tired, neglected. Abandoned cars rust by the roadside. Farms sit empty, fields untended. You fall asleep eventually, lulled by the rhythm of the train. When you wake, the landscape has changed. Flatter now, the Great Plains stretching to the horizon, but the sky has a strange colour, brownish, hazy. Dust, says your companion, noticing your confused expression. We're getting close. Kansas City, when you arrive, is coated in a fine layer of brown. It's on the buildings, the streets, the few cars that move slowly through the haze. People wear bandanas over their faces as they walk. Some have goggles to protect their eyes. You pull your shirt up over your nose as you step off the train. The dust immediately coats your tongue, gritty and dry. "Oh, first time in dust country?" asks a porter, noticing your reaction. You get used to it, or you leave. Your plan to find farm work is clearly dead on arrival. If farmers can't even grow crops, they sure as hell aren't hiring. But you're here now with 45 cents and no return ticket. The porter seems to read your mind. If you're looking for work, try the rail yards. They're always needing men to clean the engines. Dust gets in the machinery. The rail yards are on the edge of town, a sprawling complex of tracks, roundhouses and repair sheds. You find the foreman's office easily enough. "Got experience with trains?" he asks, not looking up from his paperwork. "Quick learner," you offer. He sighs, finally meeting your eyes. Everyone's a quick learner these days. Got hundreds of quick learners looking for work. You're about to turn away when he adds, "But I need someone right now. Engine 4522 came in caked with dust. Needs to be cleaned before it seizes up completely. Pays 30 cents an hour. It's less than the docks in New York, but it's something. I'll take it." The work is even worse than unloading coffee. You're squeezed into the cramped spaces of a locomotive, scrubbing dust from every surface, every gear, every pipe. The air is thick with it, despite the bandana over your face. Your eyes sting, your throat burns. By day's end, you're filthy, exhausted, and have earned a grand total of $2.40. The foreman seems satisfied with your work. "Come back tomorrow," he says. "Got 3 more engines need cleaning." You find a boarding house that charges 50 cents a night. It's cleaner than the YMCA in New York at least. You use some of your earnings to buy dinner at a cheap diner. Actual hot food, the first real meal you've had in weeks. The diner is half empty, but those who are there seem to be railroad men. Their conversations revolve around reduced schedules, routes being cut. "Passenger service to Denver's being suspended," one says. "Not enough riders to justify the run." "Freight to Chicago's down 60%, adds another. "Used to be 6 trains daily. Now it's 2, and they're half empty. The railroads were America's arteries, carrying goods and people across the continent. Now they're clotting, slowing, failing. Another symptom of the economic disease spreading through the nation." You work at the rail yards for a week, cleaning engines and eventually helping with simple repairs. The dust is a constant enemy, working its way into everything, but the pay is steady and you're able to save a little. On Sunday, your day off, you explore Kansas City. The downtown is a mix of beautiful Art Deco buildings and emptied storefronts. Roughly a third of businesses appear closed. For rent and going out of business signs paper the windows. A small crowd has gathered outside a bank. Your stomach drops. Another bank run. But as you get closer, you realise it's not that. The bank is already closed, permanently. People are just standing there, staring at the locked doors, as if willing them to open. "Had my life savings in there," says a woman, noticing your gaze. 28 years of careful saving. Gone. "They didn't give you anything?" you ask. She gives a bitter laugh. 10 cents on the dollar. My $6,000 became $600, not even enough to pay off my mortgage. You do the math in your head. That's more money than you've ever had, and it vanished overnight. What will you do? You ask. She shrugs. My sister's in St. Louis, says I can stay with her. Better than the street, I guess. By August, the dust storms are getting worse. Some days the sky turns completely black at noon, as if night has fallen early. People call them black blizzards. The dust is so thick it suffocates livestock in the fields. Children die from dust pneumonia, their lungs filled with dirt. The railroad work begins to dry up. Cutting back, the foreman tells you, can only offer 3 days a week now. It's not enough to live on. You need another plan. You hear rumours that California is better off. The farms in the Central Valley are still producing. There's work picking fruit, harvesting vegetables. You've met several families heading that way, packing everything they own onto ancient cars and trucks. Go west, young man, jokes a fellow railroad worker, quoting Horace Greeley, though California ain't what it used to be either. You consider it. Your savings from the railroad work would buy a bus ticket to Los Angeles, but something holds you back. Maybe it's caution, maybe it's fear of the unknown, or maybe it's the stories you've heard. California police stationed at the state borders, turning away undesirables without proof of employment or sufficient funds. Instead, you decide to head south. Texas, Louisiana, the Gulf Coast, warmer climates where winter won't be as threatening. The bus ride to Houston takes 2 days. You arrive with sore muscles and 632 to your name. The city is bustling compared to Kansas City. The oil industry has cushioned the blow somewhat, though even here the depression's effects are visible. You find work at the docks again, this time loading cotton onto ships bound for England. It's seasonal work. The cotton harvest has just come in, but the pay is decent. 45 cents an hour, 10-hour days. You can actually save money. The boarding house you find is full of men like you, drifters, workers following jobs wherever they appear. The conversations at dinner each night are a catalogue of America's suffering. Spent the spring in Detroit, says a wiry man named Frank. Auto plants all but shut down. Ford went from 5-day work weeks to 3. People living in the factories because they got nowhere else to go. Chicago's worse, adds another. Tried to get work at the stockyards. They're killing cattle by the thousands. Government buying them just to prop up prices. Perfectly good beef being destroyed while people starve. A pattern emerges in these stories, the disconnect between abundance and scarcity, farmers ploughing under crops they can't sell while city dwellers go hungry, factories sitting idle while their products are desperately needed, money concentrated in banks and corporate coffers while ordinary people have none. One night, a new arrival joins the dinner table. His name is Klaus, a German immigrant who'd been working as an engineer in Pennsylvania until the steel mills closed. America bad now? Yes, he says in accented English. But Europe, he makes a gesture like an explosion, much worse. He tells you about his family back in Berlin. His brother, an accountant, lost his job when German banks began failing in the spring. The unemployment rate in Germany is over 30% now. People are literally starving in the streets. Government does nothing, Klaus says. Too weak. People getting angry, looking for someone to blame. Who do they blame, you ask? Klaus's expression darkens. Jews, mostly. Communists. Foreigners, easy targets. There's a party, he continues, National Socialists, Nazis, they call them, very small before, now growing. Their leader, Hitler, he tells people he will make Germany strong again. Fix economy. Give people jobs, food. And people believe him, you ask. Klaus nods grimly. When you are hungry, when your children cry from empty stomachs, you believe anyone who promises food. The global connections become clearer to you now. The economic disaster that began on Wall Street is reshaping politics around the world. In Italy, Mussolini's fascist regime is consolidating power. In Japan, the military is gaining influence, pushing for expansion to secure resources. In Germany, an obscure political party is finding fertile ground for its message of hatred and resentment. The cotton season ends, and with it your dock work in Houston, but you've saved enough, almost $100, to give yourself a cushion while you look for the next opportunity. December finds you in New Orleans, working odd jobs on the riverfront. The weather is mild compared to the northern winter, and the city has a vibrancy that seems to defy the national mood. Music still spills from clubs along Basin Street, though the audiences are smaller, the tips less generous. You've become part of America's new nomadic class, following seasonal work, moving when opportunities dry up, living in boarding houses and flop houses, occasionally sleeping rough when necessary. Your possessions fit in a single knapsack. You've learned to travel light, both physically and emotionally. The radio brings news from Washington. President Hoover continues to resist direct federal intervention in the economy, believing that voluntary efforts by business leaders and private charities will eventually turn things around. The bastard just doesn't get it, says your roommate, a former bank teller from Omaha. People are dying out here, actual children starving to death in the richest country on earth, and he's talking about rugged individualism. Hoover has become a national villain, his name a bitter joke. Newspapers used to wrap around oneself for warmth are Hoover blankets. Empty pockets turned inside out are Hoover flags. The shantytowns sprouting in every city are Hoovervilles. On Christmas Day 1930, you allow yourself a small splurge. Dinner at a real restaurant with tablecloths and waiters in bow ties. It costs nearly $1, an extravagance that would have been unthinkable a year ago. But you've survived when so many others haven't. That seems worth celebrating. The restaurant is half empty. Those who are dining seem subdued, the usual holiday cheer muted. At a nearby table, a family, mother, father, 2 children, bow their heads in prayer before eating. Their clothes are well made but worn, the kind of outfits people wear when they're maintaining appearances despite reduced circumstances. Thank you, Lord, for this food, the father says quietly, and for the blessing of being together when so many families are separated by hardship. You think about your own parents in Chicago. You've sent them postcards from your various stops, but haven't seen them since before the crash. Are they okay? The shame that kept you from returning home seems petty now, a luxury from a different life. The new year brings news that the economic situation is worsening. More banks failing, 352 in 1930 alone. Unemployment climbing toward 15%. And still, Hoover resists direct federal relief, believing it would undermine American self-reliance. In Europe, the situation is even more dire. The failure of Austria's largest bank, Credit Anstalt, has triggered a financial panic across the continent. Germany, already struggling under war reparations, is watching its banking system collapse. Klaus's letters from Berlin grow increasingly alarming. People are turning to extremist parties, communists on the left, Nazis on the right. Street battles between political factions are becoming common. His last letter ended with a chilling observation. Democracy dying here. Be grateful for American stability, even now. But how stable is America, really? There are rumblings of discontent everywhere. Veterans demanding early payment of their service bonuses, farmers destroying crops rather than sell at ruinous prices, workers striking despite the risk of unemployment. In February 1931, you're in Baton Rouge when you witness something that shakes your faith in American resilience. A food riot. Hundreds of desperate people storming a grocery warehouse, overwhelming the guards, taking what they need. Not stealing luxury items or cash, just flour, sugar, beans. The basics